Thank you guys so much for coming. I'm Sam Roach-Gerber from VCET. As hopefully you guys know, we work around the state to accelerate entrepreneurship through innovation and technology. We're thrilled for you guys to join us on the last of a 6-month series. And I can feel the panic in the room. It's not the end, all right? There will be more. We'll definitely keep you guys updated about that. Follow us on social media for the most kind of up-to-date information. As you guys know, our goal for this series is to share the lessons learned from some of Vermont's kick-ass female founders, and there are so many of them. We have just, hit the iceberg here, tip the iceberg. We also wanted to create an opportunity for community engagement and networking between active and aspiring entrepreneurs and, of course, the awesome service providers out there. So our past events for this series, we've done wellness, we've done design and manufacturing, we've done food and beverage, we've done the arts, and also technology. And tonight we're going to be talking about energy. And we have the best of the best, let me tell you. Also, I want to thank our media sponsor who has been with us for the last 6 months, RETN, who does awesome work to ensure that these events are shared statewide across community access channels and online as well. And as you know, hopefully, again, the proceeds for tonight's event will be donated to the Vermont Energy Education Program, whose mission is to promote energy literacy, which is a deep understanding of what energy is, how to use it efficiently to enable energy usage choices that will result in a sustainable and vital economy and a healthy environment. So, yeah, so important. So tonight we'll hear from Wolfe, and then we'll hear from Beth Sachs, and then we'll get both speakers up to do a little Q&A together, and then we'll sort of transition to networking from there, which you guys were already doing so well. I'm really proud of you guys. And please feel free to grab a drink and food during, while the women are speaking. This is casual and fun and cool and stuff, so don't worry about it. So alas, let me introduce our awesome speakers. Wolfe founded Wolfe Energy to share her passion for energy conservation, energy efficiency, and renewable energy. Since 2012, she's been actively working to bring community solar projects to fruition. Coming online this summer in Stratford, Vermont, is a 7-megawatt array co-developed by Wolfe Energy. It will be the largest Superfund solar project in the Northeast. In 2015, Wolfe developed a 110 kilowatt array benefiting 5 local nonprofits in Stratford, Vermont, and is currently applying for permitting of another 200 kilowatt community solar project in Thetford. Prior to starting Wolfe Energy in 2011, she co-founded Grow Solar, a national renewable energy company. She managed nearly all aspects of the company at different times since its inception in 1998. She has dedicated substantial volunteer time to educating students and communities in sustainable practices, including developing elementary school energy education, serving 10 years on the Town Energy Committee, and lecturing about renewable energy. Dory has a Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering from Cornell. And next we have Beth Sachs, who co-founded VEIC, Vermont Energy Investment Corporation, in 1986 with partner Blair Hamilton, and served as its executive director for 22 years. She made it a successful and valuable part of the community and continues to foster stewardship of the mission, values, and goals that are the foundation of VEIC to further social justice, education, advocacy, and business development goals. As a leader in energy efficiency and passive solar work for more than 40 years, a career spanning several oil embargoes, a couple of wars fought at least partly over natural resources, and increasingly cataclysmic weather events, Beth has made it her life's work, quite literally, to save the planet. She serves on the board of the Vermont Energy Education Program, who is receiving the proceeds from tonight's event, and is the secretary of the VEIC board. She holds a bachelor's degree from Antioch College. Without further ado, we will have Dory come up and talk to us about her journey as an entrepreneur.
Oh, thank you, and particularly, Sam, for getting me up here, because I really didn't think I was of the entrepreneurial spirit, and then when I put this talk together, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I am one. This is good. So I'm just going to go through, and as I go through the slides, there'll be tips. And so the first tip is find your strength. So in high school, I knew I was good in math, and I knew I was good in science, but I didn't know, I knew I wanted to be something. I didn't know what. So I went to the counselor, I said, what should I be? And she said, be an engineer. And I said, what is an engineer? And what do they do? And no one could give me a good enough definition of what an engineer was. So I went ahead, I leaped forward and did that out of faith. But in the meantime, I think I got a nudge in my love for energy from my father. I watched over his shoulder as he designed like the better house with buffer zones and passive gain. And I was like, oh, this is exciting. And he got to fulfill one of his dreams in designing and building the first passive solar geothermal warehouse in Westchester County, Fireglow, house of a distribution center. And I got to take my physics class in '78 on tour. And he did. He got underground radiator that would bring in tempered air, so it brought in, warmer air in the winter and cooler air in the summer, and it had passive, and it now has photovoltaics on it as well. So that's when the bug got in me to be interested in energy. And I applied and got into Cornell mechanical engineering, and I had the privilege at the end of that senior year to work on a project that was fun. It was a challenge. Create a wind turbine that you could mount to the, and this isn't the exact diagram for those of you who can in the know, but create a wind turbine that can mount on the end of a dock on one of the Finger Lakes that can churn the water enough to keep the ice from freezing and thus save the dock through their long winters. And so that was an exciting to actually build a wind turbine to do that. But come '82, try and find a job in solar, not so much. So the next best thing was heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, HVAC, which is really good because it deals with energy and with people. I did not want to sit in a lab as a mechanical engineer. So you're making people safe, you're making people comfortable, it's all a good thing. And I took a job down in New York City, JB&B, and a statistic that I just found out that only 6.7% of women graduate in the STEM fields, even now. And so we need more of you all. It's a nice blue ocean, and even then it was a blue ocean, and I was the first female engineer this company had hired. And I took my job very seriously, and they said there was a dress code. I was like, okay, tie and jacket is what they had said to the men. So I came into work, tie and jacket. It was a feminine tie, but it was still a tie. And this office was the down basement of a Park Avenue building, and it was just a field of drafting tables. In that day and age, that was what it was. And I was next to really good designers, really good guys. And over time, there was a little coming of the ways, a detente, as it were. I loosened the tie, in fact, took it off, and they took down the Playboy pinups that were on the. So it was a good. However, this is a follow your passion, right? My passion was not going to be to live and work in New York City. That was just not for me. So I did it. I proved I could, and then I moved to Boston, where I found my husband. So that was the next passion. That was a good thing. And speaking of passion, our two energies together were quite something, because he too, in high school, built first solar hot water collector. He too went to Cornell Mechanical Engineering. He too got into the HVAC field. And so when we met, I feel like that was the kind of energy that helped to create the company. But I followed some more passions first. And that was, I think, inspired by my mom, because I was pretty much of a feminist, right? So Jeff's laundry was there, and my laundry was there, and you do your laundry, I'll do mine. I'm not going to fall for any of this typical stuff. And until I held that first baby, my daughter Sarah's older sister, and I held that baby, and I'm like, so if I do your laundry, can I stay home? And it was amazing. So, however, whether you work full-time, whether you work, especially if you work at something that's not yet your passion, carve out time for other. Make sure you always find that other time, because even staying home, it was a joy to be home for about 10 years. I was able to do full-time volunteering, all that good stuff. I still needed the other. And so, and you'll see a common theme in all of this, I started up a PTA program that I took around to schools, singing, slideshow, interaction with kids, and that picture is of me singing a Tom Pease recycle song, and kids, holding up. And so that was good. Didn't make any money, but it was a good venture, and I would say that was the start of my entrepreneurial spirit. Then towards the end of that tenure, I started a nonprofit called Earth, Environmental Arts and Theater, for the sole purpose of putting on this wonderful musical called To Save the Planet. And Sarah, my daughter's smiling because she was in it. It is an amazing musical. And so we took it on the road, took it around to different schools. Good time. And then I think Jeff thought I was having too much fun, which could well be. He came home one day and said, you know what, I'm tired of designing award-winning energy-saving buildings, which is what HVAC, if you're good at, does. I want to design energy-producing buildings. So he said, that's it. We're gonna go ahead and try to start up a company in renewables. And so we named it Global Resource Options, because we had no idea whether we were able to succeed. And so I was known as the light bulb lady. I would sell light bulbs. We did everything we could for the first 2 years, and then we're able, by year 2, beginning of year 3, be 100% renewables. And so my message here is to stay flexible and a little naive, because who knew that over the course of 12 years we would, having started in our back bedroom, we would have 150 employees in offices nationwide doing residential solar and commercial solar and distribution. And it was never dull. Every year, I just like, could we have the same year as last year? Couldn't we just? And no. So, and Grow Solar still exists today. It is commercial only, and it just got bought out last year by a French company. So still doing good work. I stepped away in 2010 when the residential division got sold. And I took a deep breath, got off the roller coaster ride, and said, what next? And for me, I had to take a break, and I actually wrote a book, which had nothing to do with energy, but it broke even. It was a good venture. It had to come out of me, and it did. And then I said, okay, it's got to be energy. And that's when I started up Wolfe Energy. And as Sam said, the rest is history. We did have a ribbon cutting with Governor Shumlin with this is a 110 kilowatt array in Stratford, the town, my hometown. And I'm just really pleased because it provides net metering credits to the town, the school, the library, the church, and one of the community buildings. And it just feels good. And the landowner said, you know why I'm doing this at gruff old Vermonter? I'm doing this so the kids can see where their power comes from. I'm like, yes, it's in his front yard. I mean, it's just really, all right, so that was exciting. And then the whole time, I was both at Grow Solar and working in Wolfe Energy. I was also volunteering on the Energy Committee and others. And the selectmen, so Stratford is known for the Elizabeth Mine, right? And it's now a Superfund site. And the selectmen came up to me and said, we need to cover those tailing piles with solar. And it wasn't easy. It was maybe a 7-year process. But yes, thrilled to say that this summer it's being built now as we speak. And by September 1st, it should be online. So good culmination to a lot of work. So lifestyle choice. I'm an entrepreneur, but I don't have employees. I have had employees. I do not now. And it is a choice I am making. I really appreciate being able to set my schedule, to volunteer, to live sustainably. We have had in times sheep out front where the employees, when we were out of our bedroom, not our bedroom, but an office in our house, we'd like, oh, sheep are out, everybody, let's go down and get them in. And it's nice to have diversity. And I think my business in particular, Wolfe Energy, which is very local and centric, is successful because I'm a known entity in the community. I'm not here to come, rape and pillage. I'm here to really bring good things to our community. And I'm excited to say that when we get done with the Elizabeth Mine, which goes between Thetford and Stratford, and all the work Grow Solar has done on roofs and all the work that solarized projects have had, we can pretty much say that we are meeting that 90% renewables. We have to work on transportation still, big time there. So there's my tidbits for you, future entrepreneurs. Thank you.
There's so many parallels between our stories. It's just, Vermont's such a great place, and there's a lot of lessons that you've learned that I've learned, and sometimes went in a different direction, and our kids went to school together and sing Georgian music together. Who knew? So Sam asked me to talk about the story of my business and my journey as an entrepreneur. And like Dory, I never really thought of myself as an entrepreneur. And I retired last month from the staff of Vermont Energy Investment Corporation, which maybe you've heard of, maybe not. But if you haven't, you've probably heard of its front brand, which is Efficiency Vermont. I co-founded VEIC in 1986 with my partner. Again, a similarity, two people with a real passion, and that energy made a lot more happen than I think it would have otherwise. I started a lot of other nonprofits and co-ops and one for-profit company in my life that I worked for, but I'm going to talk about VEIC today. Blair and I created VEIC with the mission of reducing the cost of energy to consumers, particularly low-income people and the entities that serve them. So I served as the director of VEIC for 22 years, and then grew it from a staff of 2 to 170, and grew it from annual revenues of 8,000 to about 40 or 50 million. I don't remember which. Once it got past $1 million, I was kind of blown away. Now I think it's about 90. And one of the decisions I was proudest of was knowing when to step out of the executive director role. Really important thing to know. I had learned everything I'd learned by the seat of my pants and by making mistakes and breaking laws and, doing a lot of things that I didn't know were wrong or right. And so it was time to bring in somebody who could really take what we had built and grow it so that it could have greater impact. Because as a mission-driven nonprofit, it's all about the impact. More impact, the better. So I was thinking about, okay, why did I start a business? Really, I don't like to follow other people's rules. That's really a confession. And I was not sure I would ever really be good at trying to find a job. I was expelled from high school for profanity and insubordination. But it was at the end of the year, so I got into college. It took me 7 colleges to put together an undergraduate degree, and that was it. I noticed, Dory, one of the lessons that I'm going to get to is education is a whole lot less important than talent and skill. But I started it because climate change, as I understood it 40 years ago, was some serious shit, and it's really scared me. The idea that we could be having such a dramatic impact on the planet, and we wouldn't know it and we wouldn't see it for years and years and years was terrifying. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and it just was really frightening. The consequences were bigger and scarier than anything I could imagine. And we also couldn't find anyone else doing exactly what we thought needed to be done. We defined the issues that we thought needed to be addressed, which was to deal with global warming right away, to understand why people weren't embracing efficiency and renewables, and then to figure out what it is that they needed and give it to them, provide it to them so that they could. So that was really the foundation of Vermont Energy Investment Corporation. What we did was work really hard to understand what the barriers were. And through hundreds of conversations, got to the point where we identified the major barriers to be the lack of access to trustworthy information, the lack of access to capital, and the hassle factor, the lack of an entity that you could go to get everything done at once, a one-stop shop. And that's really what drove how we grew VEIC. We worked hard to understand these barriers. We talked to everyone we knew who was remotely interested or thinking about this, and asked them all the questions we could, and then asked them who else we should talk to that they knew that we hadn't talked to yet. And it's really important because I've asked people at work sometimes to look at researching a project, and they Google it. It's not the same. It's just not the same. So just as important as the mission was how we operated as a business. And that gets to the what did you call it? The heart, the passion, and the making time for the important stuff. I was 9 months pregnant when we started VEIC, and I was literally moving from one house to another house. And so I can't tell you how important flexibility was. And it turns out I wasn't alone. Flexibility is just probably, if there is one thing that makes people comfortable and successful, a successful work environment, it's flexibility. I asked I was going to talk to somebody about something, and I went and talked to the women in our office who are engineers. The first one who's in the room here, Eveline. And now we have a staff of engineers, and I said, what's the most important thing? What's the thing that's made it work for you? And every single person said flexibility, just right off the bat. So it was important that I had the flexibility I needed, and that the business, which was me, so that was easy, was to trust me, to act like a grown-up and do my job. And that I wanted to extend the business so that all employees would have that same opportunity as we grew. So, and then I just have I told you in the beginning, the profanity and insubordination, and I don't like finding other jobs, and I don't like finding other rules, following other rules. You mentioned dress codes, which is my final frontier, or my last stand. I've recently left VEIC, and they said, well, what would you like to continue? And I said, I've always said, as long as I'm here, no dress code, because people are adults and they know how to dress. So who do they call when they have to do something else other than go to work? Like, go for jury duty or go to a wedding. They know. We don't need dress codes. We need dress codes for those 2 or 3 people who really don't get it. And that's a personal issue, and you need to talk to them. But, so I said, it would make me really, really happy if we never then had a dress code, even after I leave. Because I was thrown out for the insubordination was, among other things, wearing pants to school before girls were allowed to wear pants to school. Yeah, 1969, the Supreme Court ruled. So since we started the business, VEIC has grown in many directions in response to the environment, to technology, to understanding the workplace, and lots of other things. We started out doing really on the ground, going door to door and knocking on doors and screwing in light bulbs and insulating water heaters in people's homes. We then grew that into that. We grew from that experience of actually running programs to consulting and designing programs in 25 states and 6 or 8 countries. And all along the way, we were advocates for legislation and for policy that was important to the mission. And we then created the concept of an efficiency utility, which is now, if you are familiar with Efficiency Vermont, it's the first one in the country. And we built it from the ground up. And after 15 years of thinking we knew what we were doing, we decided to open offices and open a similar kind of efficiency utility in Washington, D.C. and in Ohio in 2011. So, what are my lessons? This was really fun. What are the lessons that I've learned? I didn't put these in an order, so we can talk about them maybe in the Q&A, but ask questions. Always ask questions. If you ask why 5 times, you'll get to the answer. And I have so often in my life just said, asked a question, gotten the answer, and walked away and realized that's not the answer. That's not what I was looking for. That doesn't tell me why. So some person, maybe a business guru, talks about asking why 5 times. Another one is converse, not convince. The way that we learn is to go into a situation and talk with other people and possibly come out with a solution or a new way of doing things that we hadn't thought of when we came in. But if you come in with an answer and your job is to convince people, that's never going to happen. This is really out of order, but I'm going to keep going. Words matter. gender-related words and lots of other words. They matter. Assume the best intentions. Assume people will act like adults. Make the hard decisions. First by, in my opinion, getting input from people from not just people that you trust, from everyone that is important, that you need to hear from. Get input from them, and then make a decision. And the most important thing is to explain why. I think that's been one of the most discouraging things that happens when we forget to do that at VEIC. Is it's really disempowering. It's really just doesn't work. It doesn't build trust. So explain why. Respect the law because you want to stay in business. I didn't, but I confessed that I was doing employment, the way we did our employment, really wrong for the first little while. And, well, in a few different ways. One of them, which was someone said, that could be called embezzling. And the other one was just really violating labor laws because I didn't know better. We just paid everybody for every hour they worked. So I was talking last year at a meeting like this, and there was someone from the Department of Labor, and I said, just cover your ears for a minute in case the statute of limitations has not run out on this. But we figured it out, and then we started doing it right. So respect the law. But be sure that the policies and the procedures and the way that you do things doesn't get in your own way. Because I think that's, that I tell people at work, we have to respect the law or find out and fix it. We have to be very scrupulously in line with our contracts, but contracts can be changed. So at a point where you're renegotiating a contract, you can say, we can do this a better way. And then there's the third thing, which is, we've always done it that way. And that's the one to be really careful of, to be aware of, because we're in our own way doing that if we're doing that. So encouraging other ways to look for ways to do things better and more creatively and support that. I talk about at work with introductions about the concept of Shoshin, which I think is a Zen concept, which is that it's called beginner's eyes. So any employee, whether they've been there for a month or 30 years, has a better perspective today than they will tomorrow. And especially the ones that have been there for a week or a month or a year. They can see things in a way that they'll never be as fresh again, their eyes. Let's see. One of the things I learned that was very interesting was that I'm a fiscal conservative. I had no idea I was a conservative in any way, but we didn't borrow money to grow. And so I didn't realize that was unusual, and I'm sure that it doesn't have to happen that way always, but we really only grew when we had the resources to grow. Don't take no for an answer. Be tenacious. There are so many ways that people are going to say no, and all you have to do is really dig in and find a way to get to yes, just going around. Hire for experience and talent, not education. Don't be afraid to hire people who are smarter than you, because that's how you can grow, and that's how you develop the next leaders. Celebrate exemplars. So those are from just the perspective of leaving VEIC very recently, and what have I learned? That's what I've learned. It's summarized in 12 bullet points. A little embarrassing maybe, but, put it in there. And Sam also asked us to think about how our community can help female founders. So I thought about that some. And I think it's really important to recognize the unique perspective and values that women bring to the workplace. They're different. They're better in a lot of ways, not always, but bring to the workplace and the world. Support each other by networking opportunities on a regular basis. I know that some of those are formal and some are informal. If you're not part of one, start one. It's not that hard. Find other people who are doing similar things, and they'd probably love to get together once a month and talk about their issues and your issues. Hire lots of women. One's a token, 2 can kind of support each other, and 3 is a movement. 3 is a force. And it makes a really big difference. And it also brings more women in. And maybe we could create a city or statewide resource to identify women who might be interested in our jobs, and we might be interested in, kind of like those binders that Mitt Romney used to talk about. Let's make those binders. As a woman, I think trust your gut. That was really hard for me. I did a whole, what's that called? A podcast, right? With Tiff Bloomley on trusting your gut. But use other people that you respect as a sounding board, because you don't want to just be off on your own, but trust your gut, because in most cases it's really telling you the right thing. Provide a flexible work environment, celebrate women exemplars, and speak up. Speak up's the one I'd say more than anything. Speak up and help other people speak up. Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys so much. So now we'll have them answer your questions. This is the fun part. This is when you get to ask anything, right, guys? So we don't have a microphone tonight to pass around because they can hear us just fine on the mics that are already out. So if you have a question, raise your hand and I will call on you, just like second grade. Please do.
So I realized I didn't tell you about one of the diagrams. I want to share it because it was the highlight of my HVAC career, pretty much, sort of, was at the Dartmouth-Hitchcock Medical Center. I was part of the team that designed the ice storage. Very exciting. You make ice at night when it's less expensive and easier to do, and you use it to shave off the peak demand during the day. And that was what that other graph next to the wind turbine was. Okay. Now we'll take questions.
Don't be shy. Peter Cole.
I'm curious if you each could speak about what it was like to let go of what you birthed.
I'll go because it's longer since I've done it, but boy, you didn't want to get too close to me when, in fact, that same selectman that said we need to cover the tailing piles with solar caught me at church on a raw Sunday shortly thereafter, and he goes, I've got some volunteer jobs for you. And I just had to turn. I almost left. I was just like, don't talk to me. I wanted to be. And I'll offer this, that you grew without the funding. We grew because Jeff likes to save the world all at once, and so we grew with funding. And there is a difference there because there's an exit strategy with funding. And 40. How long were you at VEIC?
31 years.
31 years. That's what was my dream job. So it's a difference. But if you want to save, I don't. Okay, so go ahead. What's your?
Well, it's been about 4 weeks, and I can't get my printer to work at home, so I go there pretty much every day. So no one knows really that I'm gone. But I'm letting go of the drama, which is wonderful, and really starting to understand that my success, what I can feel the proudest about is if this organization continues. I mean, that's what it's all about. So, and it is, and there's new leaders, and it's wonderful. And one of the things that I had said when I left was, I want to make sure that energy justice and social justice are embedded in the organization. And I hear it all the time. It comes up all the time. So I was ready.
Good.
Yeah.
That's sort of an obvious question I was going to ask. Are there, and I'm sure there are, structural and systemic barriers to women founding companies and taking them forward? And what are some key things that you would say we as stakeholders could do to knock those barriers down today? Because it's moved a lot since '69, but
Yep.
clearly we're not past that.
Yep. Systemic barriers.
I remember opportunities. So if we wanted to do government work, it was like, okay, Dora, you're 51%, I'm 50. You sign here. There were advantages to pulling that out of our hat and say we were women-owned. And I was listening to one of the speakers previously who was at meeting in a bank with her husband. They were trying to get money from the bank, right? And the banker, she'd ask the question because that was her job, and they'd respond to him. And they walked away and said, that's not our bank. I did the bank negotiations, but I worked with a woman banker. It was wonderful. So there wasn't any barrier there either.
I'd say the speaking up part is really important because it's just so easy for people, especially women, to just say, oh, I'll just live with that. And it's not going to change anything. So I think it's really speaking up. I think that what I said about 1 is a token and 3 is a movement, I think it really makes a difference when we have more women in the same workplace. And I think that in the work that both Dory and I do, STEM, career, access to training is really important, to STEM training.
Not being in the STEM field myself, do you have any suggestions for how I could expose and hopefully inspire my 2-year-old daughter to go into that field?
Is it VEIC? Is it?
Yes.
So, right? I mean, just getting, I don't know, with 2-year-olds, do a musical, but seriously, to me, every part of life is energy. And saving it and calling it precious and holding it dear, but getting them involved in math. I don't know, do you have any suggestions, math, science, how to steer our children in that direction?
I just think I don't believe that there are as many women, girls and women as there are who are afraid of it, that where that's a natural fear as opposed to something that's been, they've just picked up over time in school. So I think that, it's just really important speaking up at school. I mean,
All right, and now I have an example from our own life. I was thinking about this. So 2 engineers, you think we would breed 2 baby engineers, right? And when Sarah said, I'm going to go into theater. What? Well, it turns out she's now working in the field as a clean energy advocate, and theater is a huge, wonderful base for talking and convincing others of your passion. And so the inspiration can come, and where they go with that inspiration, they'll decide what's best for them. But I do. Every time I substitute teach math, and they're like, oh, math. I'm like, no, it's fun. Right. And I get jazzed about things, and science experiments. You can't beat science. So making it fun will help.
Tiff Bloomley, she's leaving right now, but you've been working on this Change the Story, which is all about this, encouraging women. Is there anything that you want to say to 2-year-olds and then on?
Yeah, we have an 18 and we have boys actually, so we're very nerdy and math and science oriented. And I think that it starts with each of us. We have to start examining the language that we use, what we put in job descriptions, the expectations we have when we interview people for jobs. It's really cultural, and you can't affect culture change unless you're willing to engage in it yourself and challenge yourself. So I think that there are a lot of really good articles that have been written about the hidden biases that play out in all kinds of ways that end up limiting all kinds of people in ways we might never intend. So we got to be, as you were saying, Beth, really curious, I think, about why are so few women in engineering? 9%. It's not that they can't do it.
Right.
Anyway, I'm sorry. Now we're going to go make dinner. Because we haven't successfully taught our sons to really do that. Make more than one meal.
What Tiff mentioned is really interesting. I got involved in a little effort. It was completely informal, bringing together about 10 businesses, all of whom are interested in gender equity in the workplace. It was a peer exchange, a peer group. There was no agenda. It was just, come, bring your stories, bring your issues, bring your questions, bring your successes. And one of the most valuable ones of that, we did it for a year, monthly for a year, was looking at each other's job descriptions. And we got raked over the coals for hours. I mean, there were jobs, we had a job description that used the word technical about 20 times. And it's just this is for men. It just puts up this barrier. And we said, let's take out the word technical, and it didn't change anything. There are just words, and there's lots of articles about that kind of thing that are written about what encourages women and what doesn't. That's not for 2-year-olds, I'm sorry, I went off subject. Off topic. Hi.
Full disclosure, I work at VEIC. I have a question regarding competition. So when you're nurturing this business idea and you're getting it off the ground and you're going out into the marketplace and you're trying to come up with that new idea, but then certainly other people are starting new ideas as well. They might be similar to your ideas. Can you talk about how you dealt with that, or your approach, or what you learned from that situation?
Well, we took the easy way out, which is I'm just not very competitive. And so we were really in looking for where we weren't looking to start a business. We were looking to solve a problem. And so we really looked at who else, where were those things not happening? So in a lot of ways, VEIC has filled a niche that's not been filled in other ways, which is, sort of, you could call it a lazy way. But when we started, I just looked around at in fierce competition for grants, foundation grants and government grants, and said, I think we can do this a different way.
And we definitely stepped into an established, all the hippies had come up to Vermont, and they were all off-grid, and you could get, solar panels and a battery, and you could get set up pretty easily by a number of really, really good folks that are still, still are the rock of our industry. And we came in, at the time technology allowed us to, with a battery-less inverter, and, Jeff's vision was, we're just gonna go just take a different tact. We're not going to do the mom and pop. We're going to do the business, roof, everywhere, all at once. So we picked an avenue that wasn't hopefully too. It was allowed us to go in on a path that allowed the other ones to exist as well.
So yes. I guess you guys talk a lot about folks not having sort of that background, no engineering degree. For folks that what advice, I guess, would you have for women that are interested in the field, but college is a little too late maybe, or not interesting enough to go back to and too expensive? Mm-hmm. But also just, what advice would you have to women that, to help them get that experience in order to get these types of jobs?
Good question.
Well, find a place that nurtures that. I mean, I feel like one thing that I feel good that we've done is we've had women who have come in at an entry level and have then moved into either technical or management, being aware of that, really trying to nurture that in people. Wasn't always successful. But I think that, I think it kind of gets to the education piece. It's not as important as a lot of other things.
And if you come into a company that you're excited about at the level of call center or something where it's like, oh, really? This is where I have to start? But you get excited about it, you learn the business, because we're all got the intelligence, then there'll be avenues, if it's the right business, there'll be avenues to move in.
Hi, I'm Joanne. I have a question about just sort of where to focus our energy now in this state of having folks in politics like Trump and his cabinet who are climate change deniers. Where's the best place for us to focus our energy or our giving, or what are the standout nonprofits that are doing good work, or for-profits that are doing good work that we can focus on?
That's a really good question, and I'm glad you asked. because it seems like more and more with the current administration, and even Vermont's a little bit, we need to focus on state level solutions. And I personally could speak for 350.org Vermont does a really good job, but there's a myriad. Do you have a favorite?
Well, I mean, VPIRG is really important.
By my house the other day.
Conservation Law Foundation, they have different roles. CLF really takes on policy and legal issues, regulatory issues. VPIRG is much more on the ground and advocacy broadly. And I don't know, I mean, after Trump was elected, I probably went to 9 demonstrations in the first month, and then I thought, well, what am I doing? So it's hard not to get discouraged, but I think that just finding ways to work in our communities that are related to energy, like I don't know, Naomi Klein wrote a book about a year or two ago called This Changes Everything.
Yes.
And it was just a bunch of people in Burlington got together and decided that they wanted to talk about it, and met for a couple of months once a week and it wasn't like just from VEIC or just from other places. It was, I don't know how it happened. It was pretty organic. Were you part of it? No.
And another avenue that helped our company grow is the fact that, like, Renewable Energy Vermont exists, and our legislators are approachable. We are very lucky.
Yeah.
I now live in Houston, and it's not quite the same in Texas, but they're very approachable here, and we actually, over the years, helped them to write good laws for the industry. And so, to ward off depression, or stave off the worry, doing something. So do look around and find and kick the tires on different organizations, but then pick something to do each day that really feels like you're making a difference, and that will help. And even if it's, so I go on like no plastic pledge, just try and take plastic out of your lives. Even the daily little stuff can help say, well, at least I did that.
And the beneficiary of tonight's thing, Vermont Energy Education Program, is really a wonderful organization. It's a nonprofit that, as Sam said, is trying to teach energy literacy, but they're just an incredibly creative group of people who do engineering with 5th graders and 2nd graders.
They go into school and make science fun. Make
They
energy.
really do.
Make energy fun.
They've thought about it, and they use a fan and a piece of paper and measure wind output with a 3-blade pinwheel and then a 4-blade pinwheel, so the kids can graph that in the 2nd grade. And I think that is the hope for the future, is that they're going to have that basis so that they can make good energy decisions. I mean, that's what energy literacy is about.
Got time for a couple more. Dave?
Guy in the lion shirt?
Yeah.
Hey, what skill would you have wished you'd had a little bit more of? Maybe early days, because we're so often asked at VCET to try to find density and solve a problem around a void or something.
Mine was, I think, technology. Email came about right as the business was growing, and so I just needed time management, a way to realize just because it came fast doesn't mean you had to fast respond to it, and all that kind of the day was just anyway. But that's not technical. That's just dealing with day-to-day life.
I think for me, it would have been great to have been known something about managing a business. It would have been helpful, and after doing this for 31 years, we had a little celebration when I left a couple weeks ago, and that was, well, you never figured that out, but you could do other things. And so the important thing is finding people who can, because I wouldn't have made it. And the person who really early on really did that a lot and had a lot of respect and talent in the management field would say he didn't have the big picture. So sometimes it doesn't all come in one person.
And sometimes
Often
an
it doesn't
MBA
come
can
in one
actually
person.
thwart that entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So degrees don't make it. But yes, if you get a good team together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then there was,
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go first. Okay. I got my momentum, you know. What was the best part of starting a company in Vermont as opposed to another state?
well, it depends which, both companies though. The fact that home was work for me. So we started Grow Solar from the home, and Wolfe Energy is definitely a home business, and I love the home that is Vermont, so that was the best.
Yeah, being able to do that. I mean, we finally got an office when we bought a big house when we had a little house because we were going to put our office in it, and so our office was in it. And then one day I came home from a meeting and Blair had put someone in our bedroom with a card table and a computer, and it's like. But the thing is, it's what you were saying before, or. We can't. The access to people in Vermont is just like, it's so valuable. I mean, you know, you can walk down the street or walk down Church Street and run into a senator and a couple of governors. You know.
I mean, you guys answered my phone call, so that's a pretty good example.
It's access.
We just got to keep the green state of Vermont green. So we need to keep the pressure on this last year. I understand from people at VPIRG that this last year that we didn't have much backbone in our House and Senate. So we need all of their voices to say, let's get a backbone. We don't need to rely on federal. We can do it. Sorry, there's my pitch.
It's not going to happen at the federal level.
Rick, did you have a?
Yeah, we're breaking the rules though. She said 2 more, so your wheelhouse. I'm wondering about the role of fear in the decisions that you've made throughout your career, maybe even deciding to leave the companies, but how you managed the fears that you must have encountered making these decisions.
Well, I don't know. It may be similar for you, but I didn't feel like I was alone. You know, I was in it with a partner who I was able to, you know, it was just a seamless kind of a thing, and we could support each other. So fear didn't.
I had a partner too, but fear
like
was big. we went through the period 2009, right? Panel prices were dropping, and we had a warehouse full of very expensive panels. So there was a lot of, and I remember being in cars taking kids home from high school, and they're like, "Could we just stop talking about work?" And so we SCORE volunteer. That's another thing I didn't mention. This was early on though in the business, but we did rely on. I almost was marriage counseling, but it was a SCORE volunteer to help us with our business. So seeking out that kind of help, sounding board. Just if you can voice your fear, which helps with a partner. If you can voice your fear, then it becomes less fearful. And Jeff would often say, "What's the worst that can happen? We have to go get an engineering job." So we had a nice backup, a little cushion.
Awesome. All right, thank you guys so much. That was awesome. That was great. Thank you guys. Everyone, please stick around and have a drink. And there's plenty of food left, so have some of that too. We will keep you guys up to date with what's next, the Female Founders Series. This one's over, but there's more to come for sure. So as a final plug, please check out our former episodes. That's episodes, right, RETN? Of our former speakers that came in the previous months. And then check out our podcast as well. It's on iTunes and SoundCloud. It's called Start Here. You can hear a lot more stories from entrepreneurs. Follow us on Twitter at VCET and at Hotel Vermont. Thank you guys so much.
I missed like a zillion points.
Oh, I know that always.
So I like that.
You did a great job.